Uh, Tell us about yourself and your work, and please tell us a story.
Namaskar. Good morning. I'm Amrita and I live in Jaipur, the pink city in India. Uh, by profession, I'm working with primary children. I'm a teacher since last 14 years. And storytelling has always been my passion. And I do a lot with children. But because of Eric, thanks to him, I have also started doing with adults and such teenagers. So my story is The Flowering Tree. It's a folk tale, Kannada folk tale. So once there was a girl who could turn into a tree. She would have her younger sister pour a pot of water over her, and she would turn into a tree. Her younger sister would gently pick the flowers that would grow from the branches of the tree. She was careful not to break any of the branches. Then, to turn her older sister back into a human, she again had to pour water over her. The sisters did this a number of times. They would take the flowers to the market and sell them. With the money, they would buy vegetables and bring it back home. They were poor. After some days, the mother said to their daughter, I appreciate you bringing the vegetables, but where are you getting the money for this? Are you stealing money? The older daughter replied, Mother, I'm afraid if I tell you how we are getting the money, you will not believe me. The mother said, No, please tell me, what are you doing? The older daughter said, Well, I can turn myself into a tree and then we pick the flowers from the branches. The mother said, Stop telling lies. Be honest. The older daughter said, Come out to the yard and I will show you. So they went outside. Water was poured over the oldest sister, and indeed, she turned into a tree. The mother was amazed. So every day, the girls would go to the market and sell the flowers. The family began to have little extra money, money enough to have their house repainted, to have certain extra luxury items. Now, some of their neighbors started to ask, where are these people getting all the money? Nearby, there was a prince who lived in a palace. Even he heard about this family that had suddenly become wealthy. So he came to investigate. He hid behind a tree and saw the older sister turn into a beautiful tree. And then the way the younger sister was picking flowers, and then again she turning into a human. The prince went back to the palace and said to the king, Father, I have found the girl I want to marry. She lives in a nearby village. The king said, My son, you can't marry such a girl. You are royalty and she's a commoner. But he had made up his mind and he said, I want to marry that girl. She has wonderful abilities. So the wedding occurred. That night, when the prince and his new wife went to sleep, they found their mattress very hard. So the prince said, My wife, why don't you become a tree and I will pick your flowers and we can sleep on the flowers? She did as he suggested. In the morning, they threw the flowers out of the window. And they did this thing for a number of days. And eventually, a huge pile of flowers developed outside their window. The prince had two sisters, one younger than him and one elder to him. The younger one was not even 10 years old. His younger sister asked him, "Brother, why are there so many flowers outside your window?" The prince told her, and she asked him, "Could you have your wife come down to the garden where I play with my friends and have her show us how she turns into a tree?" The prince asked his wife to do this. The wife was afraid to turn into a tree in public, but she finally agreed. When the wife turned into a tree in the garden, the young children started fighting over the flowers that grew from her branches. The children struggled and grabbed and fought, and many of the tree branches were broken. Just then it began to rain, and all of the children went running home, forgetting all about her. Though the rainwater turned the wife back into a human, but because of the damage that had been done to the branches, she was missing both her arms and both her legs. So she fell onto the ground. She tried to roll home, but in the rain, she rolled into a ditch. And from there, she could not help but roll the way downside of the mountain. That night, the prince asked his younger sister, "Where is my wife?" The younger sister answered, "I don't know. When it started raining, we all came home." But the wife did not come. She did not come home that night. She did not come home the next day or the next. They searched for her, but they could not find her. Her husband became very sad. He stopped brushing, he stopped combing, he stopped shaving, he stopped cutting his hair and fingernails. He came to look like a wild animal. Finally, he just wandered off into the forest because he was so unhappy. After some time, his wife managed to roll back up the mountainside. Then she rolled to the home of her husband's elder sister. This elder sister looked out of the window and saw the living lump of flesh laying on the side of the road. She saw it was a woman, and she thought, "That woman looks familiar. Could she be my younger brother's wife?" So the princess' elder sister had her husband's wife brought into the house and bathed. The wife was put in new clothes, placed in a bed, and given food and drink. But the wife was too weak. She could not even speak. After some days, the prince appeared outside his elder sister's house. Again, the elder sister looked out of the window and saw a person down there and thought, "This looks familiar." She could not see the face because his hair was covering it, but she looked and thought, "Could this person be my younger brother?" She had the man brought into the house. He could not speak, but with hair was parted, she saw that this indeed was her younger brother. She had him bathed, clothed, and fed. Then he was brought into the room in which his wife lay in bed. Neither of them could speak, but when they saw each other, they smiled. After days, the wife regained her ability to speak. She said, "Dear husband, please pour water on me. I will become a tree again. While I'm a tree, try to fix my broken branches as best as you can, and then pour water back on me." The prince did this. You know, the broken branches have been broken. It's difficult to fix them, and they cannot be unbroken, but they can be straightened, they can be neatened. The prince did what he could. After that, he poured water on her to make her human again. And he was delighted to see that she regained her human form with her arms and legs. So they both were very happy. Now husband and wife were strong enough to speak once more, and they told each other how happy they were to be together. And then they lived happily ever after. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was a very beautiful telling of the story.
Thank you. So, Eric, I just wanted to tell you, like you were saying, their grandmother stories. Very recently, I came across a book which had grandparents' stories.
Okay,
So I think that's changing now.
very good. When I tell that story, at least one time when I told it, I started crying at a certain point. The point that I started crying at was when the husband and wife were brought together and they couldn't speak to each other, but they were brought in the same room there. And eventually she spoke and said, please pour water on me. But somehow I choked up at the moment when they were brought back together and there was going to be hope that they were going to be able to restore their lives and their lives together. To me, that's such an emotional moment of restoration.
Right. And when I was going through the story, even there was so much helplessness in the middle, you know, and certain things like how it also makes me feel that how the prince should have been there with the wife when she was turning into a tree and being there to protect her, kind of thing, as because of course she was his wife, or at the first place not even telling her anybody that she can turn into a tree. So many factors,
But she felt the obligation to her husband and to his younger sister to go ahead and do it. But like you say, he didn't protect her properly. I find so many Indian stories are about family obligations. Anybody else? Any thoughts about that story? Any images?
I liked the compassion that the older sister gave to both the wife, and because she didn't know necessarily who the younger brother even was and still took him in. So that was, and then once she did know, of course, even more meaningful, but that she allowed both of them to come and she took care of them.
All right. Maybe shall we move on to the next storyteller? Good. Let me stop.